The story begins with two little boys running away from the walls of the protected city towards the forest. The boys do not realize the danger that could be waiting for them in these woods. A girl comes out of the city walls yelling at the little guys. The girl asks the little bums what they are doing, because didn't their parents tell them that it is strictly forbidden to go near the North Woods? The girl looks unhappily at the young scoundrels, who at that moment were saying that this is the very forest where the witch lives. The boys say that at least there's a witch there, but that's just a rumor. The girl starts screaming that it's not a rumor. She tells the backstory that 12 years ago, this woman started a horrific fire that ravaged their town. In addition to the fire, the girl tells them that on that terrible day, their town lost many beautiful people. The girl tells the young boys that her parents were also killed that night in the fire. The town's resident says it's time to go home and let them return together to the walls of the protected town. One of the boys says it's time to go home and let them return together to the walls of the protected city. After some time, wakes up a witch about which there are terrible rumors. The girl is surprised that it is morning because she herself did not notice when she was able to sleep. Ruana is a witch and is now 25 years old. Ruana begins to think and can't remember the last time she left the lab. Ruana realizes that it was her husband again, and without his antics, this situation would not have been resolved. Ruana starts to feel embarrassed because she realizes that the vulgar man is being a bit much. Ruan screams throughout the house and calls for her husband, Kraus. Meanwhile, Kraus is busy making breakfast. Ruana comes into the kitchen and says that Kraus is the last lousy dog because he took off her clothes with his paws again. Ruana is very unhappy that Kraus decided to undress her before bed without her asking. Kraus smiles at his lovely wife and says it's very nice sunny weather, and he asks Ruan how she slept. Kraus is the witch's husband and is 23 years old. Ruana says Kraus has a real nerve. Ruana could turn a blind eye to the fact that he carried her to bed, but Kraus's perversion is driving the witch crazy. Kraus asks Ruana not to exaggerate the situation because Kraus did not just undress Ruana, and she must remember what happened last night. Then the girl could not resist against the insistent Kraus that decided to take advantage of the girl's weaknesses. Kraus says that they made love that night, and Ruana must have remembered how good it felt then. Kraus says that Ruana screamed with happiness and asked Kraus to visit her in the lab more often. Ruana realizes that Kraus is telling the truth and blushes with shame. The girl doesn't know what to say because Kraus is a real pervert, and it is very difficult to live with him in the same house. Ruana pushes Kraus away and asks how dare he use her body against her will. Kraus realizes that Ruana has remembered that if Ruana doesn't mind, Kraus wouldn't mind a repeat of last night. Ruana is horrified by Kraus's insatiable demand for intimacy. Ruana doesn't know where to get away from this man, but she also doesn't understand why she continues to love him. After a while, the witch decides to leave home to take some time off from her persistent husband. Ruan finds herself in the forest, where she decides to have some fun with her magic. The girl uses her spell to turn the surrounding meadow into a blooming garden, and at that moment, the little foxes that were nearby were disturbed by the witch's magical surprise. The next moment, Kraus comes running up, which starts screaming, and he still can't find Ruana. When the Kraus finally manage to see each other sitting on one of the branches of a huge tree, the guy decides to apologize to Ruana because he promises that he will not misbehave again. Ruana says she won't fall for the guy's apology again. But Kraus asks her to stay with him and he'll cook Ruana's favorite dish. Kraus promises that he'll make the house shine and clean up every crumb. Kraus asks that Ruan return, and for that he will do anything the girl asks. Ruana decides to jump out of the tree and says she forgives Kraus, but if it happens again, even one more time, the guy's not getting off easy. Kraus falls to his knees and says he swears on his liver. Kraus also smiles and says that while he was looking for Ruana, he ran through the forest. Kraus notices that the forest has gotten a little bigger. Ruana says that anything is possible because she takes such tender care of the forest that nature begins to blossom. Ruana looks up at the sky and silently enjoys the sun's rays. The guy asks, "What did the girl notice?" And Ruana says she remembers something. Ruana says this is where they met Kraus, too. Ruana would never have thought that the wounded boy would be her husband. Kraus proudly says he doesn't understand how it came to marriage. Besides, Kraus says that scary witch is now his wife, and Ruana's a really big sweetheart. At Kraus's words, Ruana is slightly embarrassed and stands still watching Kraus approach her. Kraus approaches Ruana and says that thanks to this witch, he can become a fine man. Kraus looks into Ruana's eyes and says that it is wonderful that he was able to meet her. Ruan blushes and starts twirling her hair around her finger. Ruana is very embarrassed and says that Kraus is talking her teeth again. The girl complains that Kraus embarrasses her. But Ruana also says that she is grateful to Kraus for continuing to be with her despite her bad temper. The boy notices how embarrassed the girl is and that Ruana shows such tender feelings. But Ruana takes control the next moment and gets angry. She says that's why you have to watch so many stumps. Don't let Kraus expect her before dinner. Kraus hears questions from Ruana. Ruana wonders, how are the fruits and if they are in short supply? Let Kraus go out and get it. The girl looks around and can't find Kraus. Ruana wonders, where could the boy have disappeared? After all, he was in a good mood just now. Now he's in a bad mood. There's no telling what Kraus will do next. At this time, somewhere in the city, two men are talking about witches. One of the men says that the other is crazy if he is going to go to a place where a witch lives. The other man asks why his partner is so frightened as there is nothing to be afraid of. They are experienced royal mages and they are in no danger. All they need is a little magic to crush this mouse. The magician says that none of their predecessors have been able to defeat the witch, and they will be the first. And if they succeed, they'll live like kings. The magician asks his partner if he can imagine the riches that await them if they can defeat a formidable foe. The two of them will definitely deal with the witch without feeling the least bit difficult. The man offers to do it. The other man says with a shout that they need to hurry up and do it and finish the damn witch off. But the next moment, something crashes into his partner that falls with a bloody neck. The man does not understand what is happening and why his friend has just died. The next moment, the magician noticed a man standing at the entrance to the alley. An incoming guest apologizes and seems to have thwarted the evil plans of the magicians. After all, they were just having a very nice conversation. One of the magicians who survived asks if the man who attacked him thinks he can get away with it. This is a crime of opportunity. The mage points his hands toward the assassin and asks who he is that dares to attack the royal mages. But it turns out to be Kraus that has turned into a real demon who protects his lovely mistress. Kraus is an evil, laughing witch's favorite husband who must protect his mistress. The mage tries to attack Kraus but is still stabbed in the back. The mage uses his spell to kill the witch's husband, but Kraus easily defeats all spells with his knife. All of the magician's electrical projectiles were defeated by Kraus's defense, and the boy managed to survive the wizard's crushing blows. The royal mage doesn't understand how Kraus managed to deflect all of his blows, because he studied for decades so his power could destroy a witch. This guy's not even a witch. The magician asks Kraus, is he really the creature's six, and how did he manage to track down the mages? The man wonders how Kraus managed to pull it all off, since they covered their tracks so no one would find them. The magician shouts that they didn't even use teleportation, so it was almost impossible to find them. Kraus smiles and says that the little fairy told him everything. Fairies can help people for a fee, and Kraus was able to befriend her. The fairy says a bad boy like those royal mages can't hide anything from her. The royal magician wonders how a fairy could have appeared here, because these creatures dislike humans. The royal magician has no idea how Kraus managed to find a fairy assistant. Kraus asks the frightened magician if he has any idea how many friends this little girl has. Doesn't the magician still want to escape? Ruana is the kindest girl in the world, and Kraus doesn't want men like these men to hurt her, so Kraus has to do one thing. Kraus decides to kill anyone who wants to get in the way of his wife. Kraus is emitting some kind of strange energy, making it hard for the magician to resist him. The magician realizes that this man is a real maniac, but the magician doesn't have time to think. The man orders Kraus to back off because he's a mage in the king's service and says Kraus will regret what he's done. Even Kraus is surprised at the strong attack the royal mage is now making. The man shouts for Kraus to die and fires a huge amount of magical energy at him. When the magician has released all his energy, he can see that a huge amount of dust has risen. The magician realizes that this time he has spent all the magic and will have to start accumulating it again. But just when the man thought he was done with Kraus, he heard behind his back as Kraus continued to speak. The man laughs at the royal mage and says that these people are rotten from the inside, that they want the poor girl dead. He underestimated the royal mages. The mage turns around at Kraus's voice and doesn't understand how the guy was able to survive such a strong attack. Kraus at this point complains that his favorite clothes were destroyed by this spell, but the guy remains completely unharmed. The next moment, Kraus turns on his battle mode and says that now the royal mage's last song was light. Kraus with yellow looks at his victim and decides that it's time to unleash his attack. The mage still can't believe Kraus is still in one piece. At the moment when the royal mage was dying from another thrown knife, Kraus realizes that he once heard about a guy with a scar in the form of a shooting star and full immunity to any magic. A few years ago, this assassin held the entire kingdom in fear and killed only those who learned the magical craft. The mage realizes in his death rattle that Kraus is a mage killer and a legendary assassin. Kraus complains to his fairy that now he has to buy a new shirt because this one was torn to shreds. After a while, Kraus goes home to his loving wife. Ruan asks how Kraus managed to tear the shirt to shreds because it is a horrible sight. Kraus says that a huge boar suddenly came at him and he doesn't know what instincts made the poor animal attack Kraus so aggressively. The husband says that he was able to buy new shirts in town, and Ruana says that the guy bought all the same outfits. Ruana asks Kraus if the guy is hurt, because his shirt looks really intimidating. Kraus laughs and says that as far as Ruana can see, he's fine. Ruana tells Kraus not to scare her and also tells him that the city is in an uproar over a mysterious explosion, and there was blood everywhere, but no bodies have been found yet. Kraus keeps laughing and says that this is really scary news, especially scary when you know that a similar situation is happening nearby. Ruana says that there are 2 mages missing and the regular citizens seem to be doing just fine. Kraus doesn't understand why Ruan is so worried, and he asks her what her wife is thinking. Ruana tries to lie to Kraus at first and says that she is fine, but her husband looks at her with a look that makes Ruana realize that her husband is fine from intuition. Ruana says there's something she'd like to do later, but first she asks that Kraus take a look at this envelope. Kraus sits down to read the letter and realizes that it is an invitation from the Royal Academy of Magical Arts. Ruana says that at lunchtime their messenger honored the witch's house with a visit. Kraus begins to laugh. Could this be an invitation for a scary witch? Does Ruana decide to go to the capital to study to be a wizard? Ruana sees how unserious Kraus is about the whole thing, but decides to say that she was actually going to accept. It's an invitation. So Ruan decides to surprise her husband with the news that they're going to the capital. A man doesn't believe the word of his loving wife. Is she really serious about studying magic in the capital? At this time, the messenger who brought Ruan the letter is asked if Ruan has read the letter. But the raven simply replies in his own language that the girl is interested in the Lord's proposal. The man realizes that if the scary witch wants to join the academy, it will be a lot of fun. The man wants the girl to come to him as soon as possible. He's waiting for his Ruana. The backstory of this kingdom, called Grand Velt, is fairly commonplace in the magical world. Ruana shows where their home is in comparison to the rest of the kingdom. The kingdom has strengthened its position by using the magical arts of its specialists for military purposes. Why do people need gods when there are magicians? Their country has never been peaceful with respect to neighboring countries because the power in the country is behind the most powerful magicians. These people live in the capital where all the color of magic is kept. At that moment, one of the ordinary girls falls on the paving stones in the streets of the capital. The girl screams in pain because she has just been knocked over by a man. The guy stands over the poor girl and says how dare this vile commoner dirty his expensive cloak. The magician decides to punish the girl for daring to touch him. The girl begs him to forgive her for inconveniencing Mr. Great Magician. The man smiles happily and says that he's not apologizing enough, but that she'll get credit for being polite in the future. The man says that the girl should be happy because he is testing a new spell on her that he has prepared for an open class at the academy, so the magician tells the girl to take the blow with her head held high. People around here are horrified to see the mayhem going on in the streets, right in front of the crowds, are trying to kill an innocent girl. People are worried but can't resist the power of the magician. The next moment, the girl is protected by a barrier of some sort after snapping someone's fingers. Apparently, someone used their magic to provide protection to the innocent girl. The girl finds herself in a sphere that protected her from an incredibly strong blow. Max starts yelling at the crowd and demands that the man who just used spells to protect this girl come out to fight him. The next moment, the man is frightened, for he sees before him a frightful witch and a legend that is now in the capital. The man screams in fear. And somewhere along the way, Kraus is laughing because he realizes that Ruana has not just humiliated, but truly humiliated and buried an unskilled magician. Fairy starts to worry about Ruana, but Kraus tries to reassure her that Ruana will not lose to such a brat. Kraus tells Faye to worry about something else. Ruan wants to see a world without violence, but people live in conflict. One day, she won't have the strength to help anyone, and Kraus is most afraid that then the girl will give up. But the next moment, Kraus stands up, smiling happily, and saying that he will do his best to keep Ruan from giving up. Kraus intends to help his mistress to the last. The events take us to the capital of the Academy of Magical Arts. The man says that all morning they have been talking about this witch, so he hopes that the new student has enjoyed the local surroundings. The man's name is Andros, and he is the master of this magical academy. Ruana goes to Androsh and throws all his warlocks at the master's feet. Ruana says that nothing has changed at this academy since her parents' time. Ruan asks Andros with emphasis, "Do they really do experiments on people?" And despite this, Andros had the nerve to invite Ruan to the capital. Ruana says that in 10 years he has become unbearable. The guest asks Andros what he has become. Andros rises from his seat and a magical raven perches on his shoulder. The man says that Ruana has become even more beautiful, and he is glad to see her. Andros says he thought about Ruan every day. The girl says that Androsh should stop, and because all Androsh cares about is the color of Ruana's magic, and he's gotten even more disgusting in all this time. Andros says that Ruana is not shy about talking about such things. In any case, Andros states the fact that Ruana has accepted his invitation to join the academy. Andros asks Ruana, did she really decide to come here to bow down to him? Ruana tells Andros not to say anything stupid, and she's only here by choice. Ruana says she came here to declare war on the hated Androsh and all his minions. Androsh, along with his mages, are amazed at Ruan's words and don't know how to answer the girl. Is it not as if she had been ridiculed? They are to be attacked. Will Ruana decide to burn the capital like the people of the northern city? Ruana is surrounded by royal mages and told they won't let that witch burn everything to the ground. The next moment, Andros tells his subjects to be quiet. Andros says that first Ruana will tell him of her intentions because Ruana can shine over their great country and increase its glory. Androsh says that if Ruana has a hard time explaining everything in words, then she can enter that dome. This device will be able to reflect the girl's burden. Ruana decides to enter the dome, and Androsh says that for the greatest mages and wizards who have finally gathered at the Academy of Magical Arts, he can announce the opening of the meeting. It was originally planned that the mages would present the results of his projects to the Academy, just like last year. But as it turns out, that honor went to another equally great man. Andros says the honor goes to the most beautiful and incredible witch in their kingdom, Ruana Aldean, who is now inside the magical dome in glowing blue in color, emitting magical energy. The magicians are amazed by the amount of imagery the magic dome emits. Men realize that every spell Ruana casts is well honed, every detail, and they don't call her a witch for nothing. Androsh looks at the images of Ruan appearing and remembers the day he met the witch. Andros remembered that arrogance had played a cruel trick on him then. Ruan had illuminated the world for him. Androsh says that at this rate Ruana won't shine, so he asks the girl to show him everything. The men further study the magic provided by the Lady Witch and see among the lists the magic of whitening and the magic of taste, as well as the magic of deciphering the voice. Men realize that in battle, all this magic is useless. The royal magicians are truly amazed. Is Ruana trying to please the ordinary common people with her magic? Ruana says she's misunderstood. Lest magic be kept secret from humans and used for war and political games, Ruan inherited her parents' research for complaining about the witches. The witch accuses the king's wizards of killing her beloved parents, and Ruan will never forgive them for it. Ruana tells the mages not to even dare say they've forgotten about it. Ruana says she seems to recognize them as the very people who've been trying to undermine the status of the Magi. Ruana jumps out of the dome to the royal mages and says she will now travel the country and spread the gentle magic that she knows. A royal magician will forever be a murder weapon. The royal mages start screaming that this is the child of a traitor and they should not have let Ruan live. The Magi say they won't tolerate rebellion, so she decides to strike to kill Ruana as quickly as possible. The Korean magicians use their spells to attack Ruana and all together decide to attack the witch. The Magi curse the witch and say she should go to her dead parents. But Ruana uses her gift and her magic is much stronger than that. What men use? Ruana reflects the magic that was released from the hands of the royal mages and calmly walks away as the gates open while the men lie on the floor unable to move. Androsh realizes that Ruana was able to defeat professional mages with just one blow, and it is truly a magnificent spectacle. Andros realizes that this magic glitter is what he has always wanted to see, because Ruan is the flower of his life. Andros states that Ruana is the strongest witch in the world. Andros decides to wait with trepidation for Ruana's next exploits and expect what she will show in the future. The heroine leaves the Mage Academy. Kraus learns about the incident at the Mage Academy and is very concerned about Ruana and decides to examine Ruana from all sides to make sure she is not hurt. Ruana says she is fine and tells Kraus to stop acting strange because the humans are looking at them. Kraus, already getting a little frisky, and starts hitting on Ruana, so Ruana tries to push Kraus away. Kraus asks, did she really want to destroy the people who killed her parents? Today, she met those people and beat them up pretty badly. Now, Ruana is feeling a little better, though she thinks it's possible she'd rather kill them for real. Ruana says it's going to be a busy time from now on, but Ruana decides that she's done with this case, so she can go home for now. Ruana snaps her fingers, and Kraus sees Andros watching Ruana move at the last moment before teleporting away. He sees Androsh's unkind gaze and realizes that it is his opponent they will meet again. The pair disappear in an instant, and she and Kraus find themselves in their favorite cabin in the very north of the country. Ruan says that she loves the magic of transference because she remembers the difficult journey she and Kraus took on the wagon to King's Landing. Ruana says next trip, we won't have to stress so much about the wagon. Ruana and yawns. The girl is tired and thinks it's time to rest and start their journey tomorrow. The next moment, an excited Kraus runs up to Ruana and hugs his favorite sorceress. Ruana tells Kraus that he is very close to her and is a little shy of her husband. If they have a long journey ahead of them, they need to be strong. If they have a long trip ahead of them, they need a good night's sleep before the adventure. The husband asks what the wife thinks they will do now. Ruana says they just got back and you can't just start doing that. Kraus says the questions are unnecessary, for his heart is weary with worry. So Kraus asks that Ruana comfort him. The next morning, Ruana wakes up with a sleeping Kraus and realizes that he was finally able to fell her by force and now sleeps soundly. Ruana would like to hit him hard, but she sees Kraus smiling sweetly and realizes that it would be very unfair of her because Kraus is better after the intimacy. Ruana decides to pet Kraus and tells him that she will forgive him this time after all. Kraus smiles in his sleep and says that Ruana is very nice. Ruana watches Kraus and realizes that the boy probably won't wake up soon. Ruana realizes that's good, and then she'll have to cook a meal tonight. Ruana finds herself in the kitchen and starts to collect fruits and vegetables to start cooking. But Ruana doesn't know where to start because she doesn't know how to cook. Ruan recalls that when she was little, she cut her finger, and since then, she has not been allowed to help with the cooking. When Kraus came along, he did all the cooking. But before Ruana married Kraus, She'd eaten nothing but fruit and nuts. Ruana decides to use her magic and make the impossible possible. Ruana realizes what her magic is for, and she will make the best breakfast ever with all her power. Ruana asks herself what magic is if she can't use it to cook. Ruana realizes that she must do a favor for herself before she can do favors for others. The fire of the oven and the sharpness of the blade can be compensated for by magic. Ruana cooked her first meal of her life. After a while, Ruana goes with Kraus and apologizes for waking him up. The husband says it's okay because he just wanted to say hello to the locals. Kraus says he'll be fine, but Ruana tells him that cooking is really hard work. Kraus says he never thought his food would run out so quickly. Ruana realizes she needs to learn the magic of smell, touch, and swallowing as quickly as possible. Kraus asks if it might be easier to learn cooking. Kraus doesn't want to be fed coals in the morning. Ruana says Kraus will still see her mastery of magic, so let him wait. Kraus laughs, and Ruana asks what's wrong. Kraus turns to Ruana and asks her if she is sure she wants to go with Kraus, since he can take care of the shopping as usual, because Ruana has very difficult memories of this town. Ruana realizes that people may not like her in this city, and it might be better to stay in the forest. But on the other hand, Ruana realizes that she can't run away forever. Ruana tells Kraus that she should be ready while she can. Ruana also has to face her fears. Ruana also says that Kraus will be there for her, and she asks her husband to stay with her for a while. Kraus says he'd love to help Ruan, but the girl asks how people will react to her appearance. Kraus hugs his wife and says they haven't seen each other in 10 years. So if Ruana hides her face, then no one will recognize her. Kraus says he'll protect Ruana if he has to. Kraus gives his hand to Ruana and tells her to go with him without fear. Ruan is embarrassed, but still holds out her hand to her husband to go to the city together. Kraus realizes that his dream of a date with Ruana in the city has finally come true. Ruana says that Kraus reacts very strongly to such things. Ruana watches the flaming tower, which is reflected in her mind as the blazing torch. Ruana realizes that it has been repaired since then and looks around the city and sees the terrible fire before her. Kraus returns to Ruana and apologizes for being late. Ruana says Kraus has no reason to apologize because he came back fast enough, but Kraus says he can't leave Ruana alone, so he's been worried all this time about his wife. Ruana asks Kraus if it's heavy for him to carry such a big bag, but Kraus puts his hands up and says that the bag is very light for him. Kraus asks Ruan if she feels that 10 years have passed since those events. The girl hides her head under the hood and doesn't know because it's hard for her to even think about it. The witch was certainly glad that life in the city was back to normal. Ruan never thought she'd see the city vibrant again. She used to drive through here with her parents when she was still a little girl, and her mom and dad spent a lot of time together. Ruana remembers her father and mother when the girl wanted to walk near the fountain and her mother scolded Ruana for taking different clothes for her. Her father objected to her mother and said that Ruana looked happy, and her mother reproached her father for spoiling her daughter. Ruana is happy to remember all those times when she was a little girl. For Ruana, it is real nostalgia when she can remember the warmth and care of her loving parents. Kraus notices that Ruana is acting strangely, so asks if the girl is okay. The girl apologizes to Kraus and says she's very pampered. The next moment, a man approaches the couple and asks, could it really be Kraus? It wasn't just Kraus and Ruana who flinched at the same moment. Kraus turns around at the voice and can't tell if it's Mrs. Lionella. At that moment, Ruana hides behind Kraus's back. The boys look genuinely frightened of seeing this big woman. Lionella waves happily at Kraus and says that you don't usually see him in town on his day off. Guy tells Lionella he's here on a date, so he's in town on his day off. Lionella can't believe that Kraus has brought a girl who is now hiding behind his back. Kraus says that the girl is his wife and they are having fun together. Kraus decides to introduce his wife to his girlfriend and says that it is Mrs. Lionella and she is the mayor's wife and always helps Kraus with work. Lionella says that it is Kraus who takes care of her all the time and tells Ruana that her husband is very kind and hardworking. Lionella says that Ruana is very lucky to find such a good husband. Ruana notices that Lionel has strange burns on his face and hands. Ruana is surprised to realize that this was the same woman who tried to save Ruana that terrible night. Lionella told Blazing Ruana that she had to stop, and if the girl was having a bad day, she would listen and help her. But Ruan's eyes turned bright red like a demon's, and then she seemed to explode with fire and threw Lionella aside. From that blast of fire, Lionel's scars, which Ruana now observes from the sidelines. Ruana goes into a panic attack and begins to have shortness of breath. Kraus puts Ruana on a bench and asks if Ruana has calmed down because he's very worried about her. Kraus says Mrs. Lionella has gone to buy water. Kraus apologizes to Ruana for pressuring her. Ruana says that the mayor and his wife were close to her parents, and Lionella always looked after her until that terrible day. The wife says she's the one who left those horrible scars for the kind man who helped her parents. Kraus is worried about Ruana, but the girl can't stop her memories of that terrible night. Ruana remembers the faces of the people she hurt that day because she tried so desperately to forget them. Ruan begins to cry and scream, for she does not understand how she can look these poor people in the eye after all she has brought them. Ruana says she's pathetic and not worthy to be here. Ruana doesn't see the point of all this. Kraus decides that he needs to help Ruana somehow, so he quickly grabs Ruana's hand and runs to Mrs. Lionella. Kraus asks that Lionella look after his belongings the next moment Kraus runs by Lionella standing near the merchant and heads off with his wife Ruana away. Ruana asks Kraus what he's up to, but Kraus shouts to Ruana that they're going to have fun. Ruan is horrified at what is happening now and tries to figure out what her impulsive husband has come up with this time. She apologizes to Kraus and says she's just not in the mood, so she asks Kraus to give her some time. Kraus continues to drag Ruana along and says that unfortunately it's not enough. Kraus says that Ruana can't forget those memories, and to heal, they need those memories, but only new and happy ones. They need to have as much fun as possible so that Ruana can laugh again in this town so she won't fall apart. Kraus tells Ruana that's all he can do for her. Ruana cries and agrees with Kraus that it's time to have some fun. Kraus says that if Ruan agrees, they should hurry, but Ruan asks Kraus to wait a little longer. She has her own leg. The first thing Kraus does is to buy shawarma with Ruana from a jolly man. After a while of walking around the market and eating shawarma, they see an old woman passing by, carrying a very heavy sack and shivering from the effort. Kraus quickly eats the rest of the shawarma and decides to take the bag and help the old woman. The grandmother tells her where to take the sack, and Ruana sees Kraus happily helping the poor woman. After a while, Ruana sees a small child in a stroller walking with her mother. Ruana tries to smile sweetly at the cute child, but she does not do it well, and then the boy starts to cry. The child starts screaming, and the mother notices that her child is worried. Ruana realizes she's made trouble again, so she quickly turns around and leaves before anyone sees her. When Ruana returned to Kraus, she saw him helping all the old people in town. Kraus himself is already shaking from the huge weight he has to carry to help the old people. But people say Kraus is doing great, and they are worried about him. In the next moment, little children run up to Ruana and call her a monster. They start pulling the girl's cloak and shouting that they want to see the monster under the cloak. Ruana uses her reincarnation magic and changes her appearance so that people around her don't recognize her. Ruana points her finger at the guys who pulled off her cloak and accusingly says that you can't do that to strangers. But the boys see the beautiful girl in front of them and fall in love with her at first sight. The boys call the beautiful Ruana sister, and the girl who was with them all this time tries to pull her friends away from the stranger. The next moment, Kraus appears, as if he were Ruana's pocket demon, and decides to clean up the mess. Kraus crunches his fingers, which makes the little kids really scared. Kraus tries to scare the little bullies that decided to bully Ruana. The children quickly run away while being afraid of Kraus, who looks quite scary. Ruana sees how fun it has become to spend time together with Kraus in this town. Kraus wonders, is it really his wife's girlfriend that has reincarnated into a new image? Ruana thanks Kraus for helping her overcome her fear. Ruana says they should think not about what they can't get back, but about what they can do for the city now and in the future. Ruana is thrilled to be able to spend the day with Kraus and leans closer to her husband. Kraus has given her perspective, and still Ruana doesn't know what exactly she should do. After all, they still haven't decided. Kraus suggests to Ruana that she can think slowly so that she can make the right decisions someday. Ruana thanks Kraus for his kindness, and the boy goes up to Ruana for a hug. Kraus says that Ruana will have time to thank him tonight. Ruana says that's the trait she hates most about Kraus. The next moment, a messenger arrives on a horse with the newspapers. People ask the guy what's wrong and what could have happened, because the guy was in a hurry. Shouldn't the messenger be back tomorrow? People are surprised that the guy's horse is no longer standing. The messenger says he's in a hurry because there was an incident in King's Landing yesterday at the Magician's Society, when the witch showed up. People were truly horrified when they heard the news. Could it be the same witch who destroyed this town in a fire 10 years ago? Several weeks have passed since that day. Ruana is traveling the world with Kraus. Kraus says they are almost at Aldvis. They are off to spread gentle magic as planned. Kraus notices that Ruan is withdrawn, so he tries to get some kind of answer from her. The wife asks worriedly what's wrong, why Kraus is yelling at her. Kraus tells Ruan that she's thinking about that newspaper again, so asks that she forget about it. The news of the witch's return spread around the world. Newspaper headlines varied. The witch declares war, the witch makes a decisive move, fought back but not prepared. The lies written in the newspapers had Ruana's face attached to them and even put her on the wanted list. Wherever Ruana goes, she'll be feared. Everyone will recognize her face. Ruana tries to do what she can to help the world. The girl creates new trees and also brings rain in droughts. Ruana understands Kraus, but she's trying to change. The girl decides that she can't keep looking back and needs to move forward. Kraus looks at Ruana, that she's trying to change the world and thinking about how he can help her. After a while, the couple comes to the eastern border town of Alvis. Kraus says that according to the latest newspapers, rock debris has blocked the bridge to the neighboring state and they don't have enough men to remove the rocks. Ruana says that this problem could be solved with magic very simply. Not only the east, but all the people at the border must be in trouble now. Ruana says they should go to the incident as soon as possible because Ruana is getting angry. The guys use Ruan's magic to fly into the air and arrive at the crash site like a bullet. Kraus is not used to such flights, so he starts screaming as he flies through the air. People around them begin to be terrified that an evil witch is falling from the sky. The town authorities ask people to run and hide in their homes. Ruan even managed to scare a little boy who was also passing by the fallen stones that blocked the road to the neighboring kingdom. Kraus says Ruana's appearance was really exciting, and Ruana says it's no problem because she's used to it, and it'll be a lot easier for her to deal with this problem without anyone watching. Ruana uses her magic, and Kraus asks if there is anything he can do to help Ruana. Ruana says that Kraus can sort rocks by size, and the boy agrees to help. Kraus sees Ruana start to lift and get rid of the rock that is looming over them. Kraus says that Ruana got over very quickly and she's doing a great job. Ruana says it's not as easy as Kraus would have you believe, because all matter has magical power. Let's say Kraus wants to use repair magic and he needs to combine the magical power of the original object with the missing object. He also needs to combine the original parts. My husband says that, in other words, they're kind of puzzles, and says that the rock on the right is a little to the left, and the one on the left is higher. Ruana is surprised and asks how Kraus, who has no magic, knows about it. Ruana decides to try the guy's instructions and realizes that everything fits together and magic is used more effectively, and says he's a really good puzzle player. Ruana says Kraus is really good, but then Ruana notices the fairy, who starts kicking Kraus for taking all the glory for himself. Ruana realizes that Kraus was helping the spirit, and he just lied to the girl. Ruana takes the fairy in her arms and thanks them both because everyone has just helped her. Ruana says it's the only fairy who still misses her, so the girl has to at least repay the fairy for her reciprocation and help. Kraus realizes that every time he sees Ruana in action, he thinks that if the world is full of such beauties, magic isn't so bad. Ruana notices that Kraus is thinking and tells him to stop loafing. Kraus apologizes and says he was just admiring that beautiful magic. Ruana raises her hands and tells Kraus not to be like Androsh, and the girl doesn't want to force Kraus. Kraus smiles and says that Ruana is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen. Ruana asks Kraus to keep his dirty jokes to himself. Kraus thinks of some idea and says he apologizes, but there is something he needs to do. Ruana wishes him luck and that the guy should be careful. Ruana thinks that Kraus has gone to the bathroom and sees him rushing quickly. Ruana thinks that maybe Kraus has been patient for a long time, and now he has finally decided to go. At this time, when Ruan helps to get rid of the stones that blocked the way, she is looked at by two wizards that talk to each other and decide that this witch is very weak, and she keeps the people of King's Landing in fear. So they have to deal with her. Several mages say they need to fall a lesson to this bad witch as soon as possible. Another man says that if they don't fail, the promotion will be in their pocket. But the next moment, some evil shadow appears near the men. Kraus realizes it's time to get rid from these guys who want to hurt Ruana. Kraus will use his weapon to destroy the killers. Ruan, meanwhile, does not notice that in the cave beneath her, there is a real fight where her mage killer husband is fighting two professional royal mages. Ruan continues to arrange the stones and thinks a bit. How to get these stones in the right place? Ruana wants Kraus to come back quickly and help her. The men decide to give the witch a gift in honor of their acquaintance and decide to destroy Ruan in one blow. Kraus pulls out his deadly weapon and looks at his new victims with the eyes of a predator. Kraus will not let anyone stand in Ruana's way, and he will. Kill anyone who wants to harm Ruana. Kraus jumps out of the ceiling at the attacking mages, who are laughing snidely, trying to hurt Ruan as much as possible. One of the mages manages to spot Kraus approaching and aims his blow towards the guy. The next moment, Kraus was able to fend off the magical strike with his natural ability. Kraus lands on one of the stone ledges and says that now the assassins will be badly hurt. One of the mages says that Kraus is just another witch's servant and therefore doesn't deserve the right to live. The man decides to extend his hand forward and use his powerful spell to destroy Kraus once and for all. The hero doesn't even try to dodge the man's spell because magic doesn't work on him. Kraus confesses to the assassins that he is Ruana's husband, and Mage is surprised that their attack did not leave a scratch on Kraus. All the mages notice is that this guy's clothes are torn, but the magic must be gone after the body blows. The royal mage doesn't understand what kind of magic this is, and he's never seen spells like this before. The next moment, the royal mage remembers something and realizes that the very same ghost has finally been found. At this moment, the royal mages are waiting for reinforcements that could deal with Kraus. The royal mage tries to signal his assistants to come to the rescue as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the reinforcements are beginning to worry where their main fighting force is. One of the guys asks, maybe it's the witch interfering, but the other guy says the witch is a level 2 mage and their strongest mage on the team is level 3. The witches can't handle his attack spells. The men realize that their main mage will not lose to a low-level mage who couldn't even prepare for the attack. After a while, the reinforcements hear a strange sound, and out of the air falls their head magician and his assistant. The chief magician says that they must wait for the attack of Kraus that has now come with them. The next moment, Kraus jumps out of the dust of rocks and tries to deliver a stabbing blow with his blade. The skilled mage uses the ground to block Kraus's blow, and the blade stops against the barrier. The man realizes he's an Eret. Kraus ruthlessly pursues his goal and uses all his strength to kill the enemy. The aides do not understand the words said by the chief magician, and he tries to explain that this is the name of the assassin, Mago. People wonder. It's not him, because all they've heard about the killer wizard is about his hair and his eyes. The assassin wizard wasn't just any man. The whitish hair and amber eyes are a reflective body of magic and incredible power. All of these characteristics belong to the Erites. The head mage has heard of these Erites, so it will be a lot of fun to fight one of them. Kraus is asking the magicians, do they really know about the project? The head magician says he was involved in the project, but only briefly and only in the beginning. The strong magician says he doesn't know what happened to this project next, because he was sent straight back east. The mage says that they were brought together by the fate of a gifted man like Kraus. So the mage suggests that Kraus join their efforts to make them stronger together. Kraus takes his head and tells the magician to be quiet. After all, he just got another reason to kill him. Kraus remembers his master and realizes that his thirst for revenge for his master. Kraus will not let Ruana find out about this inner strength of Kraus that makes him hate all mages. Kraus adopts his feline form to maximize the balance of his body for his next attack. Kraus says one word that he will kill and decides to begin his next attempt at attacking the powerful mage as quickly as possible. Kraus decides that he will kill anyone involved in this project. Kraus realizes that these people are the ones responsible for the fate of Ruana. The strong mage smiles and says that courage is coming out of Kraus by the stream, but he must be losing his grip. Kraus screams that the mage will pay with death for his decision to attack Ruana. But the next moment, the mage uses his cold spell to immobilize Kraus. In the next moment, a strong mage breaks the ice and attacks Kraus from an unexpected side, so the guy didn't expect this blow. The hero is pierced by the stone sword, and the hero flies aside, stunned by the mage's attack. Then the flying Kraus is hit by magic blows that should have finished him off. Kraus crashes into a nearby rock and no longer shows signs of life. The magician says that his guys backed him up, so they're good for him. But the magician also says that Kraus is also very good because he was able to hold out for so long. One of the men says that Kraus is already dead and there's no reason to praise them. But the chief magician says that these Erites are strong as hell, and this guy isn't so simple. Kraus is lying under a pile of rocks and realizes that there are people around, but he can't save everyone. Kraus realizes that he must kill the persistent mage now. But suddenly, Kraus hears his inner voice, which says that Kraus is acting on his emotions again, and it is time for him to grow up. Kraus sees his mentor, who represents his inner consciousness. The master says that a dead man is more important to Kraus than anything else in the world, and it looks really crazy. The master asks Kraus to think properly. The guy looks at his student with a smile and says that Kraus is a real pain in one known place, and he is not so easy to kill. The next moment, Kraus decides to get up and shakes off the pile of rocks that lay on top of him. The magician tells his assistants that he turns out to be right, and Kraus is not so easy to kill. The magician realizes that Kraus must have appreciated his new attack, because Kraus probably never thought that he could get such a stunning blow from a mage. Kraus realizes that his mentor is now lecturing him in his dreams. Kraus says it's not that bad and he's just cooling his head. The boy tosses his knife and smiles, acting like his master. Kraus decides he needs to finally show his true capabilities. Kraus starts moving like his master and gets up fast as lightning. The guys can't find their target, so all their spells fly past Kraus. Kraus realizes that his opponents are really slow and destroying them won't be difficult, so Kraus thanks his master for the teachings. Kraus sees two mages below him. The guy realizes that this is some kind of new attack and decides that he needs to help the guys in their hard work. They tried to inflict Kraus with a concerted strike of their two forces, but Kraus managed to attack one of the mages who lost concentration, and the spell was interrupted. Because the spell wasn't done correctly, a torrent of water appeared beneath the magicians. That swept the people away like little gnats. Kraus realizes this is interesting magic and wonders how much effort went into this amazing spectacle. In the next moment, Kraus is attacked by a strong mage from behind using the shards of his blade. Kraus notices the threat behind him with his animal sense and realizes that the guy wants to use repair magic, and he needs to combine the magic power of the original object with the missing one. He also needs to combine the original parts. Kraus asks the chief magician if he can call his apprentices to try and handle from Kraus. But the chief magician says he can't just let his apprentices die. He asks that his blades be returned to him, otherwise Kraus will be able to attack him when the mage is unarmed. Kraus strikes a devastating blow to his opponent using a shard of his own sword. Thus, the hero prevented the mage from restoring his sword because, thanks to his wife, knows the secret of this magic technique, for which all parts of the repaired object are important. The chief magician receives a blow under his ribs, from which a bloody wheeze bursts out of his mouth. Kraus laughs and says he thought so, because the master is a very good teacher. In the meantime, Kraus has managed to deal with the elite group of mages who have come for Ruana's sake. The girl herself is doing charity work and trying to put all the pieces of stones in the mosaic so they won't harm the bridge anymore. Ruana picks up one of the largest boulders and realizes that she must take her time to keep it from falling on her head. Ruana realizes that she can't carry such a large boulder and tries to move it a little to the right to get it into position. When Ruana finally succeeds in placing the boulder in such a way that it connects, the girl notices that everything is finally ready and that she didn't even need Krause's help. Ruana begins to wonder if Krause is all right, since he has been gone for a long time, and Ruana begins to worry. Ruana realizes that she has been overreacting, but he still listens to her. Back then, they were just starting their relationship, and Krause had a lot of hassle to hang on to. Krause was probably putting up with the witch all along. Ruana realizes that she may have misbehaved with Krause, and he may have resented her for all the inconvenience the girl has heaped on his shoulders. Ruan begins to worry and asks herself if there has ever been magic to relieve anxiety, because Ruan is truly worried about her relationship with Krause. The next moment, Ruan rises and resolutely tells herself that she will behave as usual no matter what happens, because she is strong and can overcome everything. Ruan is warm at heart when she sees the face of the beautiful Krause that warms her like a little sun. Ruana realizes that this man truly loves her, and his warmth makes her feel good to her soul. Why does Ruana like it when Krause says very embarrassing things without regretting it? Ruana thinks that perhaps because of Krause's shameful actions, she is not in the mood right now. After a while, Ruana notices that there is a big explosion in the city near her. Ruana notices that it is a disaster and decides to go to the city as soon as possible to save people. But the next moment, Ruana notices a metal cannonball falling on her head that could crush her. Ruan recalls that the rock collapsed because of shells from a neighboring country, because she and her husband read the newspaper where it was written about this incident. Ruana tries to defend herself from the core that catches up with her and wonders, is this really the invasion after the girl has cleared the way and the enemies will want to take advantage of her? Ruana defends herself from a fallen shell and realizes that this time she was in danger. Ruan also notices that more and more shells are hitting the city and needs to do something to help the poor people. Ruana is racing at full speed to save the civilians, but the next moment, as Ruana soars through the air, she notices a huge number of soldiers at the walls of the city that have decided to conquer the eastern frontier. Ruana realizes that it is very difficult to cope with so many soldiers for such a small town and sees the soldiers breaking through the walls and chaos in the town. Ruan observes that people in the city itself are beginning to be injured by enemy shells and that fires are breaking out all around. People are shouting that those who can move should carry the wounded, for the fence will not last long. The men in town start screaming. Where are their magicians that are supposed to be covering them? They are trying to rescue civilians trapped under the rubble after enemy artillery strikes. But what the people don't know is that while the enemy army attacked their city, the Magi were engaged in a battle from Krause, who was able to neutralize all their defenders because they decided to attack Ruana, who came here to help the civilians. One of the men is trying to use all his powers to save the poor boy who was trapped under the big stone. But the next moment, he sees a huge block rise into the air, and the mangled boy has been healed by magical power. The boy is amazed that he is not in pain now, and the man asks where the mage who just helped them is. The next moment, the man notices that one of the shells that are about to turn him and the poor boy into a pile of flaming bones is bearing down on him. But the next moment, an artillery shell explodes in mid-air while causing no harm to the man and the boy. The man asks, "Did the wizard just help them? There can't be any other defenders of this city." Ruan, meanwhile, sits on the roof and asks people to leave as quickly as possible because she doesn't want to see people die in front of her eyes. One of the boys has no time to escape when the wall behind him collapses, and Ruana notices artillery shells bursting from behind the wall that could kill the little boy. Ruana covers the child with her magic and sees the enemies in front of her, that they came to this city to conquer it. The men with swords say there's a magician here and we need to attack him as soon as possible. All the troops are preparing for battle, and Ruana realizes it won't be easy for her to handle an entire army on her own. Where are all the other mages now? The men say their main goal is magic, for they remember their fallen brothers. This battle will decide the fate of their country, so it's their turn to defeat the invaders. Ruan sees that the boy is running away and shouts to him to stay close to her because she can't save the child if he gets away from her. But the boy shouts that he has seen a witch and starts to run away out of fear. Ruana realizes that she could use offensive magic and get rid of the enemies that are now determined to kill Ruana. But Ruana realizes with horror that she has no choice, except to use her best spell for the situation. Ruana snaps her finger to invoke the actual spell. Meanwhile, Kraus fights the other mages and yells that now is not the time for them to fight because he thought the mages' job was to guard the border. But mages say Kraus should shut up because they don't care if people die in the city. Mages have more important tasks, and it's a shame for a mage to lose to a lowlife like Kraus who can't even use magic. Kraus says he's the only one they'll kill so they won't engage the enemy. What's attacking the city? Kraus realizes that Ruana may be in danger, so we must do something to help. At this time, Ruan used defense magic to hide under the stone dome to protect herself and the child. At this time, the soldiers of the enemy army are trying to break through the stone barrier under which the mage they hate so much is hidden. The soldiers shout that if there is a breach in the dome, they will all fall together, and no matter how many die, they will destroy the mage. The captain shouts that the soldiers should not run away, even if their comrades are not dead. They should use the corpses to break through. At this time, Ruana is with a little boy under the dome and wonders what she should do. It's a scary situation, and Ruana didn't know that other peoples hated mages so much. Ruana realizes that other peoples may be victims of mages that can destroy whole crowds of people without suffering any casualties. Ruana wonders if she can handle all this bile on her own. Ruana asks her father and mother to help her. The next moment, Ruana notices a small child. The boy is crying and calling out to his mom and dad for help. Ruana realizes she has no choice other than helping other people. The next moment, one of the enemy's shells breaks through the barrier and rocks fall around and the boy is unsafe. Ruana covers the guy and goes outside to give battle to the men that have come to take over this city. The commander orders the men to attack, and Ruana stands covering the boy with her body. Ruana understands. You have to try, and she's the only one who can protect this boy now. Ruana realizes that she must also protect these attacking men. After all, they don't want to hurt others. They're just trying to protect what they hold dear. Ruana realizes that if she can't keep all those feelings alive, then magic will help her. Ruana uses her spell to counter the attack of the attacking army. At the time when Kraus finally managed to defeat all his opponents and kill the mages that guarded the eastern border territories, the guy watches as the city undergoes some magical transformation. Kraus realizes that such a magical force that comes out of the city clearly belongs to Ruana, who has used her powerful spell. Ruana at this time realizes that these men did not attack them because they wanted to kill, but they came here for their country and their families and what they hold dear, and they took the sword because it is their duty. Ruana understands ordinary soldiers, so you can't hurt them. Ruana says they are the wolves her father chased away that day. When Ruan was little, she was walking in the woods, and at one point she was attacked by a pack of wolves. Her father then defended his daughter while not harming the animals. The father only pushed the beasts away without killing any of them who tried to eat his daughter. The father got a bite but still didn't touch the wolves and says you can't blame them. They were only trying to protect the cub. Ruana was crying because her father had been shot in the arm, but her father reassures his daughter and says he can heal with magic. And when the wounds are gone, Ruana won't have to hate wolves. The father tells his daughter that they can even tame these beasts. That's what magic is for. Father asks that Ruana keep this in mind at all times. Ruana has acted against her father's wishes but has not forgotten his instructions. This time she will use the power correctly and not let anyone die, just as her father wanted. Let these wars return unharmed. The attacking warriors are struck by Ruana's spell. They can't even take a step, and it's as if their muscles can't move their bodies. Ruana uses the maximum amount of her magical energy to create huge fiery wings, as if a vortex were to swallow up all the weapons of the opponents. At one moment, all the soldiers of the attacking armies, swords and guns, and all the weapons of the people rise into the air and are sucked up by the vortexes. The men try to hold their weapons in their hands, but the magical force is much stronger, and the weapons are ripped out of their hands. The captain thinks it might be worth ordering a retreat, since his entire army is now unarmed. People see a terrifying monster that was created from their guns and realize that they will never defeat it, especially when they are left without their guns. The captain tells his soldiers that this horrible monster can't be stopped, no matter how hard they try, so they order everyone to retreat immediately. The captain says now is not the time to risk lives. As the monster looms over the city with wings of fire, Ruana sits on the head of her hand monster and thanks the humans for their decision to retreat, as she has almost exhausted all of her strength. Ruan sees the enemy army retreating and realizes that this is how they were able to find common ground. Ruana hopes that one day they will be on the same side. The captain of the enemy army turns back at that moment and pay attention to a horrible monster with wings of fire. He doesn't know what it feels like to be in front of a monster in the flesh, but why it's so hard for him. Ruan can't withstand so much magical tension, so she loses consciousness and falls senseless from the head of the huge monster. In the next moment, Kraus uses his natural cat powers to save Ruana, who falls from her created monster. Kraus apologizes to Ruan for being a little late and having to come earlier to help the girl. The whole thing on his own. Kraus lands with his wife and notices he can't smell blood. Didn't anyone die after the enemy army attacked? He hugs his wife and realizes that there is no one in this world better than Ruan, because she truly worked a miracle, and for this fight did not die. Not a soul. Kraus walks with Ruana and says that she has done a good job and now she needs to rest. The next moment, a boy appears behind Kraus and thanks Ruana for her help. Kraus smiles at the boy and says everything will be fine, then uses his ability to amplify the physical characteristics of his body, to jump as high as possible and soar over the city. Kraus carries Ruana away, and with just one jump, Kraus is able to overcome a huge wall. At the time Ruan passed out, she remembers her parents and has a dream when she was little. Then the parents come up to the little child and ask Ruan, did she fall asleep on that soft grass near the tree? Ruana sees her father and mother in front of her, who looks at her affectionately and always expresses love and care. Ruana realizes that the flower has wilted nearby and her mother asks, was Ruana really trying to look after that plant? Ruana confirms her mother's guess and says that it is true that she wanted to help the plant to grow as well as possible, but unfortunately Ruana concludes that the flower has wilted and Ruana does not know what to do with it. It's probably lonely to be on its own. Mom and Dad hear this answer from their daughter and start laughing because she is very sweet and loves life, and especially helping someone. Mom says she'll be back in a while and then draws some hieroglyphics on the ground. Father strokes his daughter and smiles sweetly. Mom shows that if you use a similar spell, then the plant grows and the flower starts to grow again. Ruana is very happy that her mom was able to help the flower grow, and Ruana thanks her mom for her help. Mom tries to explain to Ruan that it's all about magic. Dad says it's good, and it was just a matter of tweaking the formula, and Mom says she'll have to revise her notes. Ruana is very curious about the clever things her parents are talking about, and the girl looks at her father and mother with interest. Ruana asks her father what it was, and her father takes his daughter in his arms and says that it is magic, and it is an amazing power that gives smiles. Mom smiles at her daughter and tells Ruana to use magic for good, and she is sure that in time, Ruana will learn the skill as well. Ruana was very happy with her parents' answer, and she hoped that in the future, she would also be able to help people and animals with their problems with magic. A father takes his daughter in his arms, and together with her mother, they go for a walk in the woods to have fun. Ruana remembers those times. Back then, magic was Ruana's dream, and she just wanted to have the same power as her parents. Her parents were so immersed in the study of magic that they sometimes never left their lab basement. Ruan spent a great deal of time alone or watching her parents' experiments. Ruana longed for the magic to awaken soon and was very happy to walk with the other children outside, especially when Lionella helped Ruana with anything the girl asked. Girl was not bored because of a huge dream, and she was in constant expectation of a miracle when the very magical awakening would happen to her. When Ruana once again walked with her parents through the city, they noticed the refugees that accumulated under the walls of the city. Her father says that there are battles in the south and refugees are fleeing here. Her father says that the mages do not care about their people. They are in the first place more important to their dignity than helping ordinary people. Ruana's mom heals a wound on one of the refugees, and her dad starts yelling at Ori that they are in a crowded place and it's not safe here, so don't let her do that. Mom says they are still doing research to help these people because this country can't be changed by what they have now, but they can at least heal the wounds of these poor people. The father understands what his wife is saying, but on the other hand, they are putting themselves in danger when they use their magic in public. The father says that his wife is right, but they still have to hurry up and finish the research as soon as possible. While the parents and their daughter were walking around the city, they were watched by some magicians from the roof of buildings, that they were being followed. After a while, the Magi broke into the house to capture her parents. The Magi said that Rhaenys would not escape them now. The royal mage says that Ruanas and his wife have renounced society, citing the use of magic for the good of the people, and they have taken even magical materials with them. The man says that the list of crimes of Ruana's father could go on for a very long time. The little girl Ruana could do nothing against the men who had ensnared her parents, as well as magical threads around her. One of the attacking mages says he found some notes and they decide to check what it says. Ruan's father tells them not to touch it, and the main attacking mage says it's about some gentle magic for everyone. A man crushes the book and says it is mockery, not magic. The man says that according to the magic code, the kingdom of Rhaenys Ordiana and Orye Ordiana will be executed. The man also says that the parents don't have to worry because he will let Ruana live. They were ordered to bring Ruana home, even if she was rotten. But she still has Adrian blood in her. The attacking mage believes Ruana could be useful if she were re-educated. Her father and mother tell Ruana that they are sorry for what happened, and her mother also tells Ruana not to forget the promise she made to her parents, so she asks Ruana to be kind and sensitive to other people. Ruana watched as the magicians used their swords to kill her parents. In front of the poor girl's eyes, her father and mother lost their lives being executed by a squad of royal magicians. Then Ruana knew true terror, and in her churning thoughts, she wished to kill the attacking mages. In the next moment, Ruana used such a devastating magical eruption that all the surrounding people were killed. The explosion is caused to destroy everyone around her, and that is her sin. People burned alive and everything around them burned to the ground. Ruana realizes it's her original sin as a witch. Ruana runs around the ruined city trying to find anyone and realizes that once again she has killed everyone. Couldn't Ruana protect her parents? Once again, she failed to protect the civilians. At the next moment, Ruana is grabbed by the leg of a burnt man whose eyes were burned out and his skin was spreading. The man, who clearly cannot stay alive with such injuries, grabs Ruana's leg and starts pulling her towards him. Ruan is terrified and starts screaming for help because she doesn't want to die. The next moment, Ruana wakes up and sees Kraus crying and begging for Ruana to finally wake up. Kraus was very worried about his wife, who was in a coma. When Ruana finally wakes up, Kraus climbs up to her to hug her as tightly as possible and wipes his tears on Ruana's shirt. Ruana doesn't understand what is happening or what could have happened because Kraus looks terrible. Kraus says that Ruana has been bedridden for 3 days, and he is incredibly happy that his wife is finally awake. Kraus had been out of place all this time and spent every day from Ruana, hoping she would wake up the next moment. Ruana smiles and says she's sorry she made Kraus worry so much about herself. Ruan feels warmth from her husband and realizes that she knew it would be him. Ruana thanks her sweetheart for taking care of her all this time. In the next moment, Andros bursts into the room and tells the surprised Ruan that he would like to ask her to hurry up because his business is very urgent. Ruan wonders where Andros could have come from and starts screaming, why the master is in her house. Andros says that this is not how Ruana will communicate with her saviors. Ruana asks Andros what he is talking about, and the man says that he knew that Ruana would be left without magic and faint. So he brought a potion, but it won't be enough. So Androsh took a lot of things with him to recover and asks that Ruan eat them. Ruana sees a huge amount of inedible things, and even amongst all this is one dead toad. Andros asks why Ruana is being stubborn and asks Ruana if she wants Andros to be the one to feed her with his own hands. Ruana says that she already has a husband, so she does not need Andros's attention. But the man asks Ruana to get well as soon as possible and tries to charm Ruana by saying that she has the same radiance as the color of her eyes. When Andros almost feeds Ruana one of the magical cures from his hands, Kraus bursts in and pushes Andros away, and asks with irritation that maybe it's time for the Magister to go home, and Kraus doesn't want any conflict. Kraus begins to threaten Androsh and says that the medicine has taken effect and Ruana is better and that it should be enough. The Magister says that the gods are witnesses to everything and that he did not mean to harm Ruana in any way. Androsh also says that he has come such a long way, so he hoped that at least somehow Ruana would be able to thank him for his help. Kraus starts to eat the medicine Andros brought and states the fact that he was also going to look for medicine, but the master came first. Andros says it's too late to make excuses and that Kraus is too incompetent and shameless and ignorant of magic to be a witch's husband. Andros also tells Ruana to hurry up and get ready, because she's supposed to be at the palace. Ruana points her finger at the cocky Andros and tells him to keep his plans to himself. The Magister asks Ruana why she thinks he holds the troublesome post of Prime Minister. Androsh needs position and power to shut up those fools who don't understand Ruana's values. Andros says it won't be easy to accept Ruan, but he'll use all his strength and won't give up. And one day he can promise that Ruan will shine at his feet. Ruan looks fearfully at Andros, but she is most afraid of Kraus's behavior. Ruan's husband gets up from his bed and asks the insolent guest, is he trying to take his wife away from him? Kraus gets face to face with the mage and says that he will take care of his wife, so let Andros hurry up and get his feet out of here. Androsh is not a weakling either and says that Kraus is brave for marrying outside the laws of the kingdom. Androsh says that Kraus's audacity is just an indicator of ignorance and that he should have learned the law and stayed away from Ruana. But Kraus says he doesn't care about the rules. He only cares about Ruana's love for him. Ruana realizes that this is not a good ending, as the two men are probably ready to tear each other apart.